Welcome to Word Magazine's podcast, Wordsmiths of Change. I'm Lisa Bell, your host and chief editor. Today, I'm joined by none other than Bob Skinstad, Springbok legend, World Cup winner, and now a successful entrepreneur and business leader. Let's dive into his incredible journey. Bob?
Good morning. How are you?
Good, and you? Thanks so much for taking this interview with me.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Good to be here.
All right, rugby to business. You captained the Springboks, lifted the Rugby World Cup in 2007. What would you say are the lessons you've learned from your rugby career that have you taken into business?
I think the key point is lessons I'm learning, as opposed to learned, because it's a journey all the way through. I was very lucky because I started rugby. You know, rugby's gone through a huge transition over the last 25, 30 years. You know, as South Africans, we all remember 1995, and it was an amazing time for the country, but rugby was almost fully amateur at the time. You know, those players became professionals. They were my heroes, and they were 3 or 4 years ahead of me in the mean. You know, some of them were a bit older and retired, and then some of them came through and I played with them. But rugby wasn't something you could do for a living. You could do normal jobs, and the people I looked up to in what were at those stage the provincial teams, because we didn't really have a lot of international games on, you know, were butcher, baker, candlestick maker. They had a job or a vocation, and a lot of the guys were lawyers and doctors and accountants and did their stuff, but rugby was a passion and they played it as well, and we had a very strong provincial fabric, so we ended up seeing them, and then the whole game sort of morphed into a professional outfit because, you know, TV, broadcast, etc. It brings all of the dynamics of the game much closer to the economics of the game, and suddenly they realize, well, we better pay these players, otherwise they're going to do something else, you know, or go to a breakaway league, which was the case in '95, or do something like that. And then rugby became something that you could do for a living. So I was one of the youngest ever contracted players because I was the captain of the South Africa under-21 side that year. And I think they thought we better contract all the young players. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer. They just said, we're going to give you a contract, you know, you're going to sign on a year-by-year basis. And we thought, well, if we don't sign, we don't get to play. And we were all studying and working just like the other guys had, and then the dynamic changed after that. So I think I was lucky to translate just normal life into rugby, and rugby never dominated, as in, you know, I wasn't 16 going, wow, I better make this team, otherwise I'm not going to make that team, otherwise this coach won't pick me, and then what do I do for a living? I was 20, 21, and looking at the world and saying, what am I going to do for a living? And rugby's nice. Okay. And they were very separate. So I was lucky to compartmentalize a little bit like that. And I think that's why I've always had a job. That's why I've always done, you know, even at the height of playing for the Springboks, I was working in an ad agency. I took 2 years off in the UK where I only played amateur rugby, you know, and then I came back and played professionally again. So I can't say that I learnt, you know, I picked up something from the game, but the beauty is that the game teaches you so many amazing things about camaraderie, discipline, you know, self-reliance, resilience. All the difficulties of the game are almost mirrored in life. And I think, you know, without being too sort of flattering about it, the game is it's a special one because it's a game for gentlemen. It's really tough, really hard, but you are praised if you are kind and strong, and you know, show leadership, and you work with opposition who you've just tried to pulverize, but then, you know, you lift them up out of the mud type thing. So those kind of things are I suppose the values that you want your kids to see. You know what I mean? As soon as someone's in, let's have a real battle for something, but as soon as someone's in trouble or hurt or whatever, let's be the first one on the scene. And I think that those translate very well into life.
And also imagine working with a team in rugby and working in business. There's correlations.
It's the same thing. I mean, I talk now about the modern day Springboks and what they've been doing, which I really think is amazing. I mean, they've translated what South Africa has needed. You know, something to hang our hat on, something to be proud. You can go to any country in the world and talk about the Springboks, and you can have a conversation. And that's what New Zealand had for many years. That's what Australian cricket have had. That's what any American can talk about baseball and NFL, because they're unique, and the Springboks are unique. And I'm really proud to be a tiny part of that. I mean, the modern day Springboks have just taken it to the next level, and it's amazing what they've done. So I think when you look at how they've done that, it's all through good leadership, responsible people like Sia and Rassie, and that turning around and saying, well, we owe this to our country, and we owe this to our country to believe in us, because there's people in our country who've had a worse environment to grow up in than we have, and let's give them something to pray for and hope for and be happy about.
I want to throw a question here that you didn't know about. If you were, take yourself back to being that age when you went first into rugby, but you're now today, would you do things differently? Do you think you would be as happy and content with the way things are now, being that age and then coming in?
You mean as a competing player?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've got, I'm confident in my own ability that I would be okay to survive, obviously with all the same training and that kind of thing in this environment. I think I'd be much happier with the kind of coaching environment that Rassie set up. I mean, I had some good coaches, and I had some coaches who were swimming a little bit. They didn't really know what they were doing, and you don't know that till afterwards. And I've said that a few times. I mean, I don't blame any of the individuals, but we were also swimming. They said, they said to me at 22, please go and why don't you just go and lead your country in a battle against the rest of the world? Not here's the handbook, this is how you do it. Not a single ex-Springbok reached out to me and said, hey, when times are tough, this is what you do. Or, so as a player who's gone, I've tried to do a little bit of that. I would have been very happy to be in an environment, because I think Rassie's drawn on the same kinds of things that would have motivated me. I'm a, what do you call it, double immigrant, if you want. I came from Zimbabwe. My dad was involved in the war in Zimbabwe. I was born there, came here at 3 or 4 years old, adopted South Africa, and absolutely am a card-carrying and, I've got the flag on my heart type thing in South Africa, and I love it to bits, and I'll never want to be anywhere else or settle anywhere else. But then I've also gone overseas because I was a bit worried about the security of my family at that stage. So now that I look back, I don't think I would have been out of place at all in a Springbok side. I think I would have absolutely, dived in and been keen to be part of it.
Do they often call on ex-players to come and give advice and?
No. I think they're all advised up at the moment. They're okay. I think there are some players who are much closer to the game, and it's very useful to have those guys in a playing capacity or coaching capacity. I think the rest of us have got all our own opinions, and that can probably cloud the waters a bit, But we've got tremendous faith in the system, and I think Rassie and his close team have done an amazing job. I really do. I'm super proud of them. I go to the games with my kids in a green and gold jersey, not one with my number on it, because I don't want to be standing out, but in a supporter's jersey, because that's what I am. I'm a supporter of the team, and I love them.
Awesome. If you look back, was there a match or a moment in your rugby career that still gives you goosebumps? And was it the atmosphere, the stakes, the personal achievement? Is there anything that stands out for you?
Look, I think when you end up doing it for a living, any match that you win that you shouldn't have won sticks out as something that you are proud of, because that's an achievement against the odds. But then I think there's certain matches, when you win something with a team of people that you care about, and it's an achievement almost against odds that, I don't know, you might have really built it up in the season, or you might have got momentum in the season, and that forges long-term friendships as well. So I was really lucky. We won the Tri-Nations for the first time in ages in 1998, and we came from a record deficit against the All Blacks and won in the last couple of seconds of the match. That was amazing. I've never had an atmosphere like that. Even winning World Cups, it wasn't the same, because winning World Cups, you probably got, I don't know, 60-40 or 40-60, depending on who can get there. South Africans travel very well as supporters, but you go and play England in a World Cup final, and it's mainly English people because they've bought the tickets earlier and that kind of thing. But in Durban, I think it must have been 99% South African, maybe a few slivers of All Black supporters, and they didn't leave the stadium for about an hour afterwards, and you could literally, cut the atmosphere with a knife. It was extraordinary, It almost, there was like heat. It was hotter in the stadium than it was around it. So it was just, I mean, I get goosebumps even thinking about it.
Yeah, well, that's the one. Most professional athletes struggle with life after sports. How did you navigate that shift into, I mean, you were, as you said, you were actually still working and playing, but would you say there's any advice you can give to those that are now ending their professional sporting career, looking at some kind of professional journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, far be it from me to be handing out advice. I can say what's worked for me, and I can say what hasn't worked for me. There's a few things sportsmen and women take into life. And I talk in the mean. There's a lot of very talented people who can achieve things in sport without actually working that hard. So let's not put everybody on a pedestal, okay? Same in business, same in mathematics. So it's not I'm not pointing a finger. I'm passing the comment, is that some people can turn around and run a 100-meter race faster than anyone else, and they train a little bit, but they don't, you and me out there against Usain Bolt, we can train as hard as we want. We're not going to be faster than it.
Natural talent.
Yeah, exactly. So I think again, like my comment from earlier, I haven't navigated it yet. I'm navigating it. It's hard. You question yourself all the time. I think the one thing that is beneficial is that you come from a competitive environment. So you're used to little losses and recoveries, and then little wins, and then bigger wins or bigger losses, etc. So I don't see my work environment like a series of things that I have to win to validate myself. I see it as a series of things that I have to get better at, and I try and create a platform so that I can repeat the good things and eradicate the negative things. And that's just me trying to be a little bit better. But there's a whole bunch of things I'm terrible at. So if I was to be handing out advice, I think I would urge people to start earlier, because unless you're earning what a modern day footballer or an NFL player, etc., as in retirement money, or a baseball player or something like that, particularly rugby, it's not a retirement game. You can't get to 35 and say, okay, I'm downing tools now and I'm okay, because you don't have enough accumulated income to live off the interest.
Okay.
You have to do something. And a lot of guys turn around and say, okay, well, I can be a pundit or I can be a coach, etc. And those are safe and they're good, but they're competitive. Next thing you're going exactly from your playing environment into a coaching environment, you make it 2 missteps and you're a failed coach. So you haven't solved anything.
No.
But I suppose the thing that is best is, in that game we develop resilience and we develop the hard work ethic. So with those things you can easily apply yourself, go back, either study again or have studied during. And I hear great stories about the modern day Springboks now saying, look, it took me 5 years, but I eventually finished my degree. I'm like, there is no shame in taking longer than someone else, because look at your busy life.
Exactly.
You're probably better at it because you've had concentrated areas where you're able to study. Or I played with a couple of guys who, finished those degrees and then finished internships and then became a doctor. Or, so for me, that's a secondary career. I wasn't smart enough at the time to do that. But I did, in terms of just hours at the kiln, if you want. I went into advertising, I picked some mentors, I spent time with them, I stayed in those agencies and understood marketing, understood whatever the modern day version of business development is, and I've used that across my career in different roles, because you can go into a role like that and you can create a place for yourself just through understanding and hard work. You don't have to say, okay, I'm taking my chemistry degree and therefore I've got the ability to mix these 3 things. You know what I mean? It's not a vocation that needs only one path. You constantly learning on the job. And I think the best marketers and and people in that space are learning all the time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would just say sportsmen and women, it's a competitive environment. What you need to take with you that's most important is those three things. Your work ethic is probably the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on to your current projects, and I'm going to name a couple. Forgive me if I get them wrong, but I've got your KNF Ventures, Elixir, ASBH, Bizier's Herald, do we say that right, in France? Among others. Out of these projects, firstly, how did you get into them? And secondly, what out of them is exciting you the most at the moment?
Well, I mean, thank you for the for the list. It's just reminding me that I've been busy. But so KNF Ventures is something I was in. I worked at Knife Capital for a long time. Yeah. It's a venture capital firm. KNF Ventures was our secondary. We call it Section 12J, so it's like a government-backed subsidy grant, which allows people to put saved money into venture capital. Yes. And we were a general partner managing those under Knife Capital, which was great fun. I remain an investor in that, but I'm not in the GP anymore. Okay. I actually then moved across to a family office called Draper Gang. And I spent almost 10 years. I opened their office in London. That's why 10 and a half years ago I moved across to London. And then at the end of those funds, we had a sunset clause, and I was lucky enough to join Elixir. So Elixir's a listed consultancy. We're based in London. We had a South African founder, or co-founded by a South African who's the majority shareholder, and some guys in the UK that he'd met in work, who'd actually worked in South Africa with him, and Elixir is a high growth challenger consultancy. I absolutely love it. If you think of like an Accenture or a Bain, or we work on those kinds of projects, but we've started a little bit smaller with a challenger mentality. So we've had a huge sort of time or period of growth with great markers, great profitability, great acquisition run rate, etc. And all of the partners are shareholders. So I joined them and sort of worked on a project on the side, started really enjoying what I was doing with them, and then I joined them as a partner after 6 months. And after that, I've been there 3 years now after that. And we are, very focused on becoming a bigger and better version of ourselves. We're growing very quickly around the world. We've actually recently opened an academy for data and analytics engineers, post-grad engineers in South Africa. UCT, Stellenbosch are all feeding into our workforce, which then translates into a workforce for our clients. And we solve problems for big businesses. So we've got great clients like big insurers, big banks, big production businesses, engineering facilities, transport, and we've got a whole bunch of partners who would run the account, and then we've got loads and loads of analysts, principals, managers, etc., who are all involved on a project by project basis. So I've got a team. We've focused predominantly on I would say broadband and fiber, as well as broadcast. And then we've also started up a sports vertical. So we do some work with like Southampton Football Club, the ownership group of that, British Cycling.
Nice.
The founder of the Absa Cape Epic has started a new race over here, and he's looking for a partner that can onboard people like, with all the modern day apps like Strava and all those kind of things. So we've got an integrated onboarding platform which we've built for them. Okay. It's called the Nedbank Gravel Burn, which is launching later this year. So lots of projects. I love it to bits.
Yeah.
And then ASBH Béziers, so it's a rugby club in Béziers, which I found thanks to a friend of mine, Andrew Mertens, who was an ex All Black captain, and he actually played there. And Béziers had an owner that went bankrupt a couple of years ago. So the mayor of the town actually stepped in and sort of paid some of the bills and that. And then COVID struck. So it just was in a holding pattern for a while. Yeah. And myself and some other investors have gone in and taken control of the club alongside the mayor. The town is still a small shareholder. and that's the journey that we're on. It's great fun. I mean, I can't get there as often as I'd like because I'm working full-time at Elixir, but I go to most of the home games because they're Friday night and I can get across there from London quite quickly. Yeah. Sometimes I'm hurtling down the highway in France, but I usually make it for all the kickoffs and see the team and then do a post-match debrief the next day, and then I'm on the phone to them a couple of times a week.
And where are they in the sort of level?
In the league. Yeah, good question. So a lot of people are saying to me, is this like a welcome to Wrexham? Or are you doing something like that? And we are filming all of it. Yeah. But they're only one level below. So in France, which is the best rugby league in the world, bar none, because of a number of factors. They've got an amazing council of surveillance across French sports. So they don't let you go do any haphazard management. You can't buy someone that you can't afford. Okay. You can't pay for things that isn't in the budget, etc., without pre-approvals. And they manage that all incredibly well. But this team is one team below the what we see as the top 14. So you would have heard of like Racing Club and Toulouse. They've been champions of Europe and that. Béziers is one league below in Pro D2, so professional Division 2. But as recently as 1984, they were champions of France. Okay. So they've got a great rugby history. So we're hoping to get them back up there one day. I'm just boxing with a few of the Frenchies at the moment because they don't like to be told what to do. But that's
what's your role? What do you?
I'm president. Okay. Which I think it's just a title. I mean, I'm an owner and president. So I have to make a few. I've got to sign off on a lot of things that they don't want to sign off on, but I'm not allowed to make decisions that they do want to make decisions on, which is the tough part. But it's been great. I've made a lot of friends. I can see how passionate the French are about all of their sport, and it's actually been a great understanding a bit more about the socialism influence in French politics and how that affects what they do for the people. You get a lot of nuances that I wouldn't have even imagined.
Okay. So you're learning
all the time. And I mean, if I was there and I'm a French guy and I didn't like the working conditions, I could down my tools and the state will pay me while we resolve our conflict. Which is lovely, but
like the dole in a way.
It's exactly like the dole, except they pay me 75% of what I was earning, and the company pays all the taxes on it. So if it's weird. So the players have got a lot more power than where we were. It was like, well, we're giving you the contract, you do whatever you do. So we've got to be quite reconciliatory about our planning for the season and how that all gets put together. Okay. But we've got a good setup. We ousted a coach who was a little bit troublesome. We've got a really good new guy and his team in there, and I try and get there as much as you can. I don't want to get to a stage of my life where I say I didn't try it because I've been so close to rugby for so long. I want to do something in the business of rugby.
Yeah, nice. I love it. All right, so fast forward 5 years. What's happening, would you say, in your personal and professional career? Where, like, what have you got some plans involved, obviously, with current things that are going on?
You mean projecting 5 years from now?
Yeah, where you see.
I think there's going to be quite a lot of consistency. I'm commuting from the UK to South Africa at the moment, and obviously my family are growing up. I've got 4 kids. I almost say young kids every time, but they're not so young anymore.
Any of them in rugby?
My son plays a little bit. I don't think he wants to be a professional, which is fine by me, but I'm sure he'd love to play university rugby and that kind of thing, which I think would be great. And he's at a boarding school in the UK. And then my youngest son is at Sax School and just loves it. Rugby every weekend, big muddy face. Okay. And so I was watching him this weekend. And then my oldest daughter is at Stellenbosch University, which is great, and she's really enjoying it. And then my other daughter's at Herschel and plays a lot of hockey and sports and that, but is working really hard as well. So I think in 5 years, hopefully they've accelerated and progressed their careers. My wife and I are really keen in the future of settling in and around Cape Town-ish. Okay. I would imagine that, if I can keep up the work that I'm doing with Elixir, we'll be on a great path. It's a rocket ship that I'm lucky to be on, so I'd like that journey to continue. And then if we get our cards right in the rugby club, I think we will have attracted some interest and hopefully won some games, and we'll see if we're competitive enough to go up a league.
Nice. Also exciting. Alrighty. So for young South Africans, whether they're in sport, business, or both, and you've answered a little bit, but is there like a best advice for building a career that's both impactful and sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I think these days there's a few different factors. Like I would talk to a young rugby player, the same things are true. You know, if you work hard, if you keep your ability to get on with people and manage your own discipline, I think you'll be fine in any career. You know, but we've got some incredible nuances with the advent of high stakes technology. You know, AI is revolutionizing what people are able to do quickly. Yeah. And I think there's two paths. You either embrace AI and become an expert much quicker than everybody else in some of the systems, whether they're agentic or you know, model orientated. And there's lots of young South Africans who are doing that, and we see them. I'm very close to some of the venture capital firms, and we see, you know, young South Africans reaching out to businesses around the world and saying, hey, we've developed this technology, would you have a look? And people are like, oh my goodness, you know, we're going to have to integrate that in what we're doing. And some of it is in medical fields or in financial fields, which could impact the world from right here in your backyard, which is amazing, you know, because those shockwaves are much bigger than they were. Because you could have had a startup in South Africa for 20 years before anyone in Silicon Valley even hears about you. True. You know, they just take bigger bets over there. It's a yes economy. You know, they're like, yes, I'll give you $20 million to develop that. And, you know, South Africa, it's like, well, let's prove it, make it profitable, then come back to me. Yeah. You know, which I don't disagree with, because you're building a good business, but it's harder to make a dent in the universe if you don't have that early backing. So that's the one thing. With AI, that's very possible. On the other side, I think the creative economy should be resurgent. You know, we're going to have machines driving our cars. So we're going to have, and that's happening already. You know, I was picked up in California 3 months ago for a conference in a Waymo car, no driver.
How did you feel getting
terrified. You know, absolutely terrified. Yeah. But then should I have? Because I might have been picked up by a driver who'd had something to drink, or was texting, or, you know, that thing never turns off. Okay? But in the back of the car now, I've got much more time to consume. Okay? So little screens suddenly become a lot more, and we can already say how much we feel that taking over our worlds, you know. So now I'm sitting in the back of a car, and we all think, oh good, I'll have half an hour more to work. But do we work? No. Sports scores, something on one of the apps, and it doesn't matter if it's an Instagram or a LinkedIn or whatever it is. You know, how am I sending a message to someone close to me or someone at work, etc. And consuming. So if we're consuming, and this is where my point is, we're going back to the audience economy. So suddenly, how do I know that the game that I'm watching, or what I'm being fed about the game that I'm watching, is real? Because we've seen the imagery on AI. So actually, no, I want to down tools and go and watch live sport again on the weekend, because I need that thrill. You know, so I think there's a circle happening. I think sports and live sports, for everything from UFC, you know, to games that we haven't even seen rise above the parapet, like live, you know, hockey, games where you're competitive and you're playing a game and you can get into a stadium environment. You know, what do the Romans say? Bread and circuses. So feed us something to take our minds off our daily life, and we'll be happy. And I see humanity moving in that direction. And because, and obviously I'm quoting much smarter people than myself. I'm certainly not any senior in the suburbs here. But I can see that happening, and what we see as a consultancy, as Elixir, how people are starting to act in the day to day. But I do believe that for people that are creative, what an amazing opportunity to be more creative. What can you produce? How can we, you know, I'm talking artisans, you know, and also people with a trade. Yeah. You know, a robot can't just come along and put together, you know, a a wooden construction that's alive in your head.
Exactly.
Yeah, it can if it's a plan and someone else has designed it, but you can still be the person who puts, a shelf, a bar, a cupboard, or whatever up in a house because someone else can't.
Yeah.
And they can all sit there and say, I've got a YouTube video of it, but they don't know how to hammer a nail.
No.
So I actually think those, and we used to call them sort of lower level trades, and I think that's rubbish. They should never be lower level trades. So plumbers, builders, I absolutely think those are amazing trades. And carpentry, why would we stop finding it amazing to build and add on beautiful wooden parts of churches and places of prayer and gathering, So I think that's a huge part of the economy where kids can come out of school and say, well, I'm going to be a carpenter and I'm going to be better than anyone else because that job can't be taken.
No, true. Very true. True that. All right, a wee bit of a fun question is you're sitting at your dream dinner table and you're able to choose 3 guests, living, dead, doesn't matter. Who would they be and why?
I think, so is my wife allowed to be there, or is she cooking, or
she's watching?
Is she watching? Okay, she's there. Okay. Otherwise, I'll get in trouble. No, I'm teasing.
She can be there.
No, I think I would choose 3 people that have been very influential on my life because I've liked time with them. 2 of them are not with us anymore, and one of them is, and they would be. I've had lunch and met him a number of times, so I would love to have dinner with Nelson Mandela because of the calm presence that he gives everyone he ever meets and how much he's done for humanity. I mean, a living saint in his time and a form of deity for many people in the world. A guy called Roelof Botha, who's one of South Africa's most successful exports, who loves this country very much. He's the managing partner of Sequoia. He was a part of the PayPal mafia. He was a child genius from South Africa and part of the Botha family, which were very influential in South African politics and education. And he also loves rugby, and I know so did Nelson Mandela. So there'd be a great chat there, and maybe Nelson Mandela could get Roelof to come back to South Africa and run this country of ours or something like that. I don't know. I'm making it up as I go along. Yeah. And then I'd want to take my dad. My dad passed away. I miss him very much. He was a huge influence on my life. Loved his rugby. He was a doctor. He was a very much a community and people person, and he would have got on like a house on fire with both of them.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. All right, now last question. It's our signature question. We always ask our covers and features. Is there any book, author, podcast, YouTube channel, anyone in that you would recommend, that we could recommend to our readers?
So I don't know if he's got a podcast going yet. I've heard him on a few podcasts, but maybe mainly as a guest. There's a guy that I've worked with called Owen Eastwood.
Okay.
And Owen has written a book called Belonging. And basically, it's an in-depth book, but it's very readable because he's such an intelligent guy. He makes it piecemeal and readable. And he talks about motivation for humans and what motivates us. And he harks back to our origins. He talks, some of the things he talks about are why, a company starts to fragment at more than 150 people. It's because villages were optimal at approximately 150 people. And the belonging is how, if we can create in sport or in business, a culture that's familial, family oriented. It doesn't have to be on a mom and a dad. It doesn't have to be, cushy environment, but those strengths. So you've got a certain type of leader. It doesn't matter if it's alpha male or female. And he talks about the New Zealand cultures where it was often a female at the head of a tribe, but the men were warriors. And then you have African influences where the men were head, but would also be warriors. But then there was a very loving and sort of female influence around the growing up of the children, etc., etc. And he talks about all of those things and how we are actually just creatures, and the best coaches know that and work with us as you would work with a child coming through a family or through a village. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. And Belonging is an amazing expose of that, using the best teams, the most successful sports teams over the last 2 or 3 decades, and who the people were that recognized that and why they gave such longevity to the winning nature of those teams. So Owen is an amazingly successful practitioner in that space. He's also a qualified lawyer, and he's worked with England football squad, got them to the highest level they've ever been. Rejigged the entire background of Chelsea football squad with the new owners. Worked with the South African cricket team at the 2 times they were World Test champions, and has worked with, he's a New Zealander, a Kiwi and a proud All Black supporter, and has worked with their teams as well. So if anyone hasn't read it yet, Belonging is a really, I wouldn't say easy read, but it's one of those books where you can't wait to turn the page because of there's a little surprise and nugget in every chapter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
All right. Pleasure. Thank you for listening to this episode of Word Magazine's podcast, Wordsmiths of Change with Bob Skinstad. We'll be back soon with our next edition featuring Andriette Giorgio, founder and owner of Mournful, a brand that's as sweet and as inspiring as her journey from passion to a thriving business. Don't miss it, coming soon in 2026.